December 30th, 2025. I endured everything, and I'm proud of myself. 47 years old, Ternopil National Guard, Natalia is, about her decision to join the Army, end quote. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover the remarkable depth of dedication and institutional resilience driving Ukraine's defense and recovery.
And that narrative of, profound individual commitment is really what defines the sources we dove into today. It doesn't matter if we're looking at the front lines, the emergency services, or the really critical work of reform happening far away from the trenches.
Okay, so let's unpack this because the sheer scale of these internal efforts is it's incredible. Our core mission here is to synthesize the resilience of a whole nation, but by looking at the people who make the system work. We're exploring the dedication of women forging careers in these high-stress, traditionally male fields. Think law enforcement and military psychology.
We also get into the very specific infrastructure of international aid, the tangible support. We found the story of how a modular administrative center became the very first restored public building in the town of Borodianka, which was just devastated.
And crucially, and this is for the long-term view, we have to examine why that ongoing internal fight against corruption is so absolutely central to Ukraine's ability to maintain Western support, to secure aid, and ultimately to secure its European future.
You know, that opening quote you shared about Natalia, the 47-year-old in the National Guard, it sets the perfect tone for all of this.
How so?
It captures that spirit of personal sacrifice, meeting professional necessity. But it also reflects, I think, a kind of quiet revolution happening in these institutional roles.
That's a great starting point because it signals that this dedication isn't just about fighting on the front. It's about professionalizing service roles, often against decades of, established norms. What evidence did we find of that institutional shift?
We saw it very clearly in law enforcement. There's an organization called the Ukrainian Association of Women in Law Enforcement, or UAWL for short.
Okay.
And this isn't just some networking group. It's a real professional body. And it's structurally inspired by the Canadian police experience, which has, over a century of history in this field. UAWL is actively promoting gender equality across the entire service.
And what's really interesting is how they define equality. It's not about exclusion. In fact, they have male members, right?
They do, yeah. Men make up about 10% of the total membership.
Yeah.
And that acceptance is such a powerful institutional signal that this is about standards, not about exclusion.
Exactly. And while that institutional change is vital, it's the personal stories where you really see the resilience shine through.
Absolutely. Take police captain Natalia Bilovich. She has 23 years of experience in military and public service, including time in the Odessa garrison. Her entire academic focus, her PhD, is on the professional self-fulfillment of female police officers.
So what kinds of barriers is she actually finding in her research and her own experience?
Well, she talked about this very specific, almost insidious challenge of being treated too kindly by her male colleagues.
Too kindly? How is that a barrier?
It's a subtle form of patronage. It prevents true parity. So her effort isn't just about doing the job well. It's about forcing her colleagues to see her as an equal professional, not some kind of exception to the rule. That's a deep internal battle.
You see that same commitment to breaking down barriers in the State Emergency Service, the SES. We found this incredible story about Oksana, a diver with the SES.
Right. She could only even train for that job after the official ban on women in the profession was finally lifted.
And this isn't some desk job.
Not at all. She's performing these incredibly high-stress search and rescue missions on the Dnipro River and Kiev lakes, often in just terrible conditions, retrieving vehicles, people from freezing water. Her colleagues noted her extreme stress resistance. She had to prove herself to everyone, every single day, and she did.
And we can't forget the dedication we saw in healthcare. I was floored by the account of Vera Tselik. She's a 52-year-old senior midwife in Chernihiv.
She stayed for a 42-day shift.
A 42-day shift. She basically lived at the maternity ward when the full-scale invasion started.
And what makes her story so powerful is the environment she managed to maintain. Strikes were hitting a neighboring hospital. The temperature outside dropped to minus 11 Celsius. Freezing. And she just remained this calm anchor for everyone. She organized the mothers and newborns to walk 500 meters to the shelter, but she did it with purpose. She kept saying that children should be born surrounded by warmth and love, not chaos.
That focus on maintaining humanity, professional standards in the face of absolute chaos, that brings us to the next vital piece of this resilience puzzle, the emergency responders themselves.
They're the immediate front line, constantly working under fire.
And operating at the very limits of human capacity. I mean, look at EMT Antona Trochenko. He's only 29, working in Chernihiv.
During the 41-day siege, he never went home. He lived at his post. His entire day was a calculation. What's the shortest, safest route to get a patient to the hospital? All while, squinting at the sky, worrying about what might fall next.
And he had this one moment that just defined his dedication. His team gets a call for a complex rescue. A woman had fallen from a ninth-floor window onto an annex roof below.
A really precarious situation.
Extremely. And he knew his female paramedics would struggle with that climb, so Anton just scaled the ladder himself. He got to the roof, assessed her, stabilized her on a vacuum mattress 90 feet in the air, and coordinated her rescue.
And she survived.
She survived. It's just pure, immediate heroism.
But that level of relentless commitment, it comes at a huge psychological cost. And that's why the support for these workers is just as vital. We found SES psychologists like Anna Humeniuk in Donetsk Oblast. They're mobile now. They travel with teams to remote settlements where the tension is just constant.
So how are they managing that? How do you deal with persistent tension in a crisis environment?
They're adapting very quickly. With support from the UNDP and the EU, they got these noise-canceling headphones. So they hold meditation and psychological debriefing sessions right there in the community shelters. They're literally using technology to create these little pockets of calm amidst constant risk.
And that international support is physically retooling these services, isn't it? Ensuring they have the speed and the reach they need.
Exactly. Modern, specially equipped vehicles were given to SES psychologists in high-risk regions, Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, so they can reach people in immediate need, often bypassing roads that are just completely torn up.
That tangible physical restoration of infrastructure is such a key marker of recovery. It shows international faith in the future.
It really does.
Yeah.
Look at Borodyanka, a settlement where almost all the administrative buildings were just gone, destroyed under occupation. The very first administrative building to be restored wasn't just any old office.
It was what, a brand new modular center?
A brand new, full-fledged, two-story modular administrative service center, an ASC.
That's a huge symbol. That's the hub of the community, where you register births, get documents, access social services.
Precisely. It covers over 300 square meters, has 27 workstations, and it opened incredibly quickly, March 2023, thanks to EU and UNDP funding. It immediately sent a message to the community: we are back.
And that support extends to rebuilding the foundation of the future, which is education.
Right. Reconstruction efforts at damaged schools and colleges, like one hit by 2 separate missile strikes. They included essential safety upgrades. They equipped the shelters with ventilation and restrooms.
Which is the necessary step to allow students to finally get back to in-person classes.
Yeah.
The recovery isn't just about bricks and mortar, it's about functional, safe spaces.
Exactly.
So if we pull back from that immediate crisis response and rebuilding to the macro strategy, we have to talk about the deeper institutional battles, the reform agenda. Because military strength, as critical as it is, it has to be paired with governmental integrity to secure Ukraine's future, especially its path toward the EU.
Absolutely. That whole post-Euromaidan drive really crystallized with the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. It includes the DCFTA, the Free Trade Area, which has been fully enforced since 2017.
And this shift wasn't just political ambition, it was economic necessity.
A total necessity. Trade with Russia just plummeted. It went from over 25% of Ukraine's total trade in 2012 to just over 11% by 2016. That economic break forced structural reforms at a pace that was, well, it's previously unthinkable.
And the anti-corruption milestones, those are real achievements that build trust, right?
Oh, for sure. The establishment of institutions like EBU and SAPO back in 2014 laid the legal groundwork.
But the most famous success story is probably the simplest one.
The Prozoro platform.
Exactly.
By putting all government tendering and procurement online, it saved the state over 31.2 billion hryvnia.
Wow. Let's put that in perspective. What does that translate to?
It's about 1.1 billion US dollars.
$1.1 billion. That is massive. That's critical funding that can be redirected immediately to defense, healthcare, social support. It proves the system is reformable.
It does. But serious challenges remain. We found evidence of a real pressing need for deeper, often politically explosive changes. specifically land reform and fixing the old pension system,
Why is a pension system such a big drag?
because it's inefficient and incredibly expensive. The current system costs about 11 to 12% of GDP every year.
And the European average is what?
The European average is around 8 to 9%. That difference, that 3 percentage points, represents billions of dollars being spent inefficiently, diverting crucial resources from infrastructure and defense.
And on the micro level, while the state is grappling with these huge reforms, you have individuals just constantly adapting.
Sometimes leading the charge. Look at Tatiana. She ran a successful microgreens business in Kharkiv, lost a lot of it in the war, and had to restart from scratch in Poltava.
But she didn't wait around.
Not at all. She got support from the EU and UNDP for website development and business advice, and she rapidly rebuilt her market. Her resilience is a mirror for that entrepreneurial spirit you need for long-term recovery.
And you see women stepping into roles traditionally held by men just out of sheer necessity and patriotism. The story of another Natalia who trained to operate tractors.
Right. She said, with men at the front lines, someone had to work, and she got a demanding job at an agricultural company. That willingness to bridge labor gaps is a huge, largely untapped source of resilience.
It certainly is. Which brings us finally to how the social fabric holds together under all this pressure, especially with internal displacement and veteran support.
Yeah, when you have massive internal displacement, it creates these huge, unexpected burdens on host cities. The sources we looked at highlighted Uzhhorod.
Its population grew by almost half.
Almost half. 27,000 registered displaced persons, plus an estimated 60,000 more mobile users. That puts a massive strain on housing, infrastructure, everything.
And often, the social needs are the hardest to meet.
That's where places like the social adaptation space in Romney become critical. They are a salvation for older adults, many of them displaced. They struggle so much with loneliness after losing their entire social circle at age 60 or older.
You lose more than just a house. You lose your community.
Your entire structure. And it's vital that support extends to the families of those who are fighting. The living, loving, and waiting support space that was created by members who themselves have loved ones serving.
Just to create a safe space to share those emotional burdens.
Exactly, to navigate that unique anxiety. And then, of course, there's the journey home for the veterans. It's a massive and growing challenge.
Soldiers returning with severe injuries, deep psychological trauma, it requires a much more comprehensive approach.
Which is why these pilot social adaptation programs, again supported by the UNDP and EU, take a truly holistic approach. For veterans like Artem, the program provides integrated rehab, psychological support, and crucial help just navigating civilian bureaucracy.
Like getting a disability pension or proper orthopedic footwear.
Right. It's about reintegrating them fully, not just treating the wounds. And we're seeing veterans step up to help their peers. Combat veterans like Viktor Yesipov, who has served since 2014, they're trying to create veteran spaces in places like Chernihiv.
With a gym, rooms for psychologists.
All of it. To address that common debilitating feeling of being unnecessary after you're discharged, it's about creating new purpose through community.
So if we synthesize all of this, the dedication of professional women, the critical role of international partners in rebuilding, and the necessity of high-level transparency reforms, it paints a picture of a nation fighting a complex two-front war.
It really is. One is external and the other is internal, against stagnation and old practices.
And that internal struggle feels like the defining factor for the future.
I think it is. We learned that Ukraine's greatest challenge moving forward might be overcoming the inherited cultural acceptance of petty corruption, this practice often called blat.
Blat, so small-scale bribery.
Yeah, exactly. Those small thank you payments to doctors or teachers or even police. It persists largely because of low public sector salaries. So many workers kind of rely on it. For high-level reforms like Prozoro to really succeed, they have to be paired with this grassroots cultural change.
You have to create a system where professionals are paid well enough that they don't need blat to get by.
That's the key. That's how you achieve true institutional integrity and secure that European vision.
The critical reminder that the battle for the future is fought not just in trenches or parliaments, but in institutions and in the everyday habits of the population. That's what will determine the soul of the nation's recovery. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.